Volteface TV, my name is Paul North, I'm the director at Volteface, and we promise to keep you up to date with what's going on in Germany with their ongoing negotiations with the EU around their plans to legalise cannabis for adult use. So we are going to do exactly that in today's show and look at an article which was released last night in Zeit Online. But before we look at the article, please, while you're here, like and subscribe. We've got lots more content to come. Germany is a focus, but also is just drugs policy in general. So if you're interested in drugs policy, cannabis policy, then make sure you like and subscribe for more content. Okay, so let's take a look at the article in a bit more detail. So this is in Zeit Online, and the headline is Lauterbach plans expert opinion on cannabis legalization. This was translated, obviously, from German to English. So some of the sentences are a little bit clunky, but I needed to translate it because my German GCSE could only get me so far. Only so far to know that Zeit means time, but nothing much else. So we will read the translation. Federal Health Minister Karl Lauterbach wants to secure the plans for a controlled legalization of cannabis with an expert opinion. Confidential talks with the EU Commission show that very good arguments are needed to convince them of the path they have taken, said the SPD politician on Tuesday in Berlin. In addition to the legislative preparations, a scientific report should therefore be commissioned. The availability of the goals of pushing back the black market and at the same time not expanding consumption as a whole and achieving better child and youth protection should be made clear. Interesting, very interesting that confidential discussions have taken place and Germany is already having to go a little bit further than just putting legislation on the table. We can assume that Germany didn't foresee this, otherwise I'm sure they would have done that prior to any confidential talks or discussions. But it's interesting that the EU are saying we need very good arguments here. We need to be convinced. It's also good to highlight what that report is going to contain and show. As we talked about in the show yesterday, in our previous show, we highlighted where some of the tensions are going to exist between Germany and EU as they start to discuss and explore adult use legalization. And we talked a lot yesterday about the movement of cannabis and about the Schengen Protocol. But what seems to be coming to the forefront here is this concern that legalization of cannabis equals more consumers. Because as we can see, the report is going to contain and show how you can reduce the illicit market but not expand consumption and also protect children and young people. So that is an interesting element of the discussions and the negotiations. In terms of demonstrating that, it shouldn't be too difficult. There is good evidence in North America about how legalizing and creating adult use recreational markets don't suddenly result in huge numbers of adults using cannabis. There's not been anything particularly concerning to come out of North America. In fact, there's been some quite good evidence to show it protects young people. So that, I'm sure, will help Germany in that case. And, you know, I guess those arguments are not particularly difficult to make with this growing global evidence base. But it is interesting that they're being requested of Germany, and it's not just a case of let's look at the legislation. It's like, let's see the data, let's see the information. So I think that's worth noting and highlighting that those early negotiations, there's already a request for more information and research, in particular research and evidence that has a health-based focus. But the good news that comes out of this article is there is no expectation for this to delay current timelines. Lauterbach said he was firmly convinced that this could be presented on the basis of the report, this being the concerns, the information that they were after, the very good arguments essentially. And there will be no delays as a result. The draft law is expected to be ready by the end of the first quarter of 2023. The federal government then intends to submit it to the EU Commission for approval of the model in principle. If things go well, the draft could come to the Bundestag in the second half of the year, said Lauterbach. At the end of October, the Cabinet decided on the key points for the controlled, this is what we talked about yesterday, all the requirements and the legislation, the 30 grams, etc., etc. The closing comment's quite interesting. Lauterbach explained that it's not about legalising the black market, as in the Dutch solution. It is planned to also invite international scientists in the report, which should primarily analyse medical aspects. So two bits are worth noting there and interesting. One, Lauterbach is saying, look, this isn't the Dutch model of like a bit of a grey area. Yeah, cannabis is legal to consume in certain areas, but it's illegally grown and brought there and all that kind of the grey area that exists. It's not about that. It's about sensible adult use regulation. And also that there will be international scientists. That will help Germany, particularly if they're wanting to evidence what happens when you legalise cannabis. And I think what this goes to show, the reason I'm not particularly concerned about it is, now that we have huge states and countries legalizing cannabis for adult use, we're getting huge amounts of data and research. And initially, years and years ago, before there was a great deal of cannabis legalization and adult use markets, people could hear and talk about regulation. So that sounds a terrible idea. Everyone's going to use it. You're going to have people using cannabis everywhere and smoking cannabis in the streets and all this kind of thing. And you can see where that concerns. It's a concern that comes out of a lack of education and awareness. But once you legalize cannabis and you create these models, you see that doesn't happen. It's fine. I took 3 politicians from the UK to Canada to show them an adult use legal market 3 years ago, and they found it quite boring. They were like, all right, okay, yeah, it's fine. I mean, it's actually not that concerning. It's fairly boring and dull. You don't have everybody queuing up and this desperate rush for cannabis. Sure, you've got your enthusiasts, and like on the day you legalise, there's a bit of a buzz and there's people queuing at the doors and stuff because it's a novelty, but you don't see huge populations suddenly descending on the market and creating social tension and concern and worry. So because Germany's going to have international scientists and experts, hopefully those scientists could draw on a global evidence base, draw maybe from their own countries, places where they're studying or developing research, and show the EU Commission through Germany in this research report that you legalise cannabis and it's not without its problems, no policy is without its problems, but it's a damn sight better than what they have at the moment. So we just wanted to give you that, what we think is interesting development. We're going to keep you up to date with short videos like this as Germany continues to discuss and negotiate its plans with the EU. But we're also going to have loads more content to come in the world of drug policy. So please like and subscribe for more. And if you want to come on the show or talk to us about what you think is interesting in the world of drug policy and cannabis reform, then get in touch for our contact details below. We'd love to hear from you. Thanks for watching, and we'll see you next time.